Many years ago, I served as a writer for a Webtoon comic. I served as a storyboard artist, background artist, and more than anything, I served up puns. And in this series, puns were no side dish. They were very much baked in. One character's personality was built around them. One of the most popular chapters was a literal pun battle. An entire species of characters was a glorified pun, and it sustained an entire 20-chapter arc. For 113 weeks, I wrote puns, and in that time, I like to think I learned a thing or two. Even so, I always assumed that if someone really wanted to learn how to make puns, they could probably just Google a guide from someone far more practiced at it than me. When my time on the project ended, it seemed my serving skills were destined to be shelved. So did you know that YouTube has no videos explaining how to make puns? There are videos on the history of puns, videos defending the place of puns in society, and oh, so many where people recount an obnoxious amount of puns. This video, literally titled How to Make Puns, spends 2 minutes making them without ever explaining how. They're fine videos, and most do what they set out to do. A few cover basic steps and suggestions regarding puns, but it's April 1st of 2024, and the process of punning remains painfully unexplored. I want to fulfill this niche, but I was concerned I might be a little too rusty for this job. But as they say, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. That's why I picked up this book, How to Tell a Joke, by Marcus Tullius Cicero. That is, the same Cicero who served in the Roman Senate alongside Caesar 2,000 years ago. The book is a translated excerpt from a longer piece called De Oratorio, written in 55 BCE. In it, Cicero espouses a great deal of wisdom about the nature of humor, and of puns in particular. But what really caught my eye was a quote in which Cicero describes encountering an ancient guide to jokes. Evidently, this guide was less of a guide and more of a compilation. Turns out, ancient Greek YouTube let Cicero down too. I don't want to let Cicero down. I believe that with his wisdom and my lived experience, we can create an effective, relatively short guide to making puns. And if you think my YouTube channel is only good for making metaphorical analysis, don't you worry. If you check the views on my last video, you'll surely discover that my content's already a complete joke. Imagine two coastlines. You want to connect them. To do so, you must build a bridge. This bridge is your pun. Puns are generally defined as jokes which exploit different possible meanings of a word. These coastlines are the different meanings, and the bridge between them is the exploitation, which is to say, the joke. Now, not every bridge is the same, nor are they all equally impressive. But with 5 basic principles, we can rank the best bridges and improve our own constructions. The most important part of a bridge is its architecture. Since puns exploit the different possible meanings of a word or phrase, puns really involve 2 words, which appear similar but come from different places. There are many methods of pairing such words, and we can rank them by how similar and therefore how humorous they are. The lowest form of similarity is what I call a smash. You take 2 words and you smash them together. Consider a band conductor who's tasked to make lunch for their musicians. They call the finished results a bandwich. This kind of pun typically results in a nonsense word. It's often associated with children and is the easiest for beginners because the words required just need a sound in common. But the connection between band and sandwich is flimsy. The whole thing seems built of sand, which is no strong ally as building materials go, and I'd say it's well worthy of being banned in our practice. Slightly better than a smash is a mimic. A mimic is when you notice 2 words with a lot in common and replace one with another. Cicero calls them out by another name and cites an example from his time. Mr. Bickle, pff, Mr. Fickle. For a more recent example, we might look to Brock's iconic line from the English dub of the early Pokemon seasons. I'll use my trusty frying pan as a drying pan. These are probably the most common form of pun, and they do at least utilize coherent words, but because it's a joke format easy enough that anyone can make them, and low effort enough that it lacks merit, it typically results in the iconic bad puns. If you ask me, it's the worst form of deadpan humor. With that said, if you must use smashes or mimics, the best of these use words which are already very similar. But if you can do that, you're probably better off just using an insert. An insert is where you find a given word or sound inside of another word, then replace it. For example, you might have a cat who's very vocal when watching The Sound of Music and conclude, this cat's going to star in his own musical. The term musical is another nonsense word, but if you read it aloud, it sounds perfectly normal. If you can replace a word with an identical sound, your skills come alive with the sound of music. But it can be awkward getting these puns understood, as the end product is still a made-up word. This is solved by one of the more well-known of puns, the homophone. If you find two words which sound similar but have different meanings, you're at the cusp of a very good pun. Consider the terms weak, as in lacking in strength, and week, as in a period of 7 days. Imagine if you had been, hypothetically, trying to write a humorous video essay in a short period of time, and you said to yourself last Sunday, should I stay up a little late and get this thing done now so I don't have to be up at 1 in the morning on Friday night? And let me tell you, writing this line on Friday night at 1 in the morning, I can definitely state, procrastination is for the weak. These puns are some of the most iconic. They don't need to be exactly the same, which affords them some flexibility, but the closer you get, the stronger the connection you forge. That said, if you want to construct something even stronger, beware. The best pun structure is not for the weak-minded. The homolog is the gold standard for puns, a single word exactly the same in appearance but with multiple different meanings. This is a type that Cicero explicitly mentions as a good joke, and accordingly, homologous puns don't come with the same bad joke energy as a smash or a mimic. While I doubt I could really compare to Cicero's oratorical skills, finding the right homolog is sure to bridge the gap between us. But one observation Cicero made, which I never realized until I read his book, is that there's one more type of bridge, the proverb. Cicero merely states that proverbs are also a kind of wordplay, but I think there's more to it than that. A pun whose structure specifically alters a phrase or proverb may be the strongest structure of all. When we quote proverbs or sayings, we're already invoking its wide variety of prior meanings and uses. To use the proverb at an appropriate time, alongside an appropriate pun, is one of the most difficult bridges to build, but it's a very sound technique. Its rewards speak volumes. Just to prove it can be done, here's a real-world example I used just a couple weeks ago. It was a Sunday morning, and I was getting brunch with my friend Ed. Ed has a conspicuous, raucous, uncontrollable laugh. When something cracks his fancy, he really cracks, and those are his words. We all tend to say that a good joke will break poor Ed, in the best way. That day, as we were waiting for our omelets, I got poor Ed with a pun I honestly can't remember, because the pun I thought up as he cackled was so deliciously good. I told him, I'm not even sure I want to say this next one. When prompted, I could barely keep a straight face as I explained, look, I'm sorry about all these puns, but you know what they say. Can't make an omelet without breaking a few Eds. At first you might think this is a lazy mimic around the words Ed and eggs, but the truth is it's not a mimic. The pun is a homolog with the word break, as in to break an eggshell and to break out in laughter. And all of this fits within the meaning of the proverb, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. These are the main ways in which to construct a pun. The stronger the architecture, the stronger the pun, the funnier the joke. But a bridge is judged by more than its structure. One might also ask how far it spans. The span of your bridge represents how different the two meanings are from each other. The further apart, the more impressive the bridge, the funnier the pun. Consider the cat sitting behind me as I write this, who wasn't impressed with my previous cat pun. He's rolling his eyes, giving me the stare. He's implying that I'm wasting time which could otherwise be spent playing with him. Well, you're acting catty today, aren't you? Now, catty is a perfect homolog. It means to be spiteful, and it also means to be like a cat. But this pun doesn't really hit because cats can already act catty. Cicero notes that this is a fundamental part of humor. It's the divide between our expectations and the reality which creates the joke. The distance between these two coasts is too small. This bridge doesn't go anywhere. Much like my cat, who hates driving in the car and stays in my room while I'm home. Only when I go out does he venture into the living room and spread the yarn ball my mom bought him all across the house. He's got quite the yarn to spin about that. In this context, yarn as literally yarn and yarn as in a story are sufficiently different that the pun plays nicely. So now you have a bridge, it crosses a great distance, and it stands very strongly. But how do you get across? The traversal of a bridge, that is, the telling of a joke, is the most difficult to teach. It's the creation of a sentence which incorporates the pun's different meanings, starts on one coast, and ends on the other. This will often come down to context. The best casual puns come up in conversation, where the context of a natural reply is constantly changing. To recognize the current context, identify a shore and a bridge, and then invite someone to cross it, all before the context changes, is tough. But remember, you don't need to build the bridge instantly. You just need to get people across. I tend to start with the coasts, with the context at hand. After all, you choose the shore where you build your bridge. More often than not, you're already on one side. If you're driving, your car is doing the coasting. If you're in a restaurant, the coast is on your menu, and vice versa. Within the coast you're on, you can select appropriate bridge archetypes. Break and break. Table and to table. To serve food, to serve in tennis, to get served with an insult. And when you choose these bridges, consider their span. With the right architecture on the right span, now you just need a way across, a punchline. It must use both meanings in one sentence. You could use a break. Let's table that for later. Someone just got served. Once you have a sentence like this, you work backwards from the punchline to reach the present conversation. You work from the other end of the bridge to where you are now. How does one lead into a punchline? Well, it's very dependent on the context of your conversation, but I have two sets of best practices to keep in mind. Simplicity. Like taking out the roadblocks and toll booths on a bridge, remove extra words, leave only the joke. The longer you take to cross the bridge, the more people get bored and start hanging around it or off it. Storytelling. You can take a very long time to get across the bridge, if people don't realize they're crossing it. Cicero likes this method and notes that it doesn't really matter if the story's true to life, as long as it keeps the audience engaged. This is like decorating the bridge. If people are distracted by the decor, they may not mind a longer walk. You don't need every line of a story to be a pun for the story to be funny. All can be forgiven if by the end they realize they've crossed a bridge and not gotten wet. That's why we call it dry humor. These two methods are somewhat in opposition. The point is that you can employ either or both depending on your preference, and trust me when I say, the more bridges you build, the faster you'll get. Writing is a good way to practice, since you'll have all the time in the world, and you make your own contexts. It's no replacement for conversation because you don't have to find the right moment to interject, but you can at least get a hold of the structure. And in both cases, if you practice enough, you'll eventually know how to do the right thing. There's one aspect of bridge building which needs little explanation: originality. If you've seen and crossed a bridge before, it becomes less interesting. Consider the old favorite, "Why'd the chicken cross the road?" This pun is so juvenile, when I heard it for the first time around the age of 5, I didn't realize it was a pun. I thought the joke was that the chicken had no special reason to cross a road. It's actually an ingenious proverbial pun. The answering line that the chicken wishes to get to the other side can both mean the literal other side of the road and the proverbial other side, as in the afterlife, which the chicken is likely to find on his ill-advised journey. But most of us don't laugh at this pun anymore. It's worn out its welcome. This is why YouTube videos and ancient Greek joke books are not effective teachers. They're more interested in repeating puns than constructing them. We can all admire a good bridge, but we'll only go so far in telling us how to make our own. How do you make a good original bridge? How do you find something funny? In Cicero's own book, he argues about this question, and he argues for both sides. The translator of the book recounts arguments about Cicero's arguments that continue to the present day. No one can agree whether you're born funny or can be taught. So the question is, if we can't be taught, is there any point to trying? And to this question, Cicero found an answer. My own view is that the value of these rules is not that textbooks can help us figure out what to say. It's that when we've gotten some things to say, from sheer inspiration, from thinking hard, if I'm trying things out, we can then have either the confidence that it's right, or understand that it's wrong, since we'll have learned a standard to check it against. The point of learning about puns is that if we hit upon something we think is funny, by study, by chance, or by trial and error, we should assess our idea in that moment against the ideas of others, and either refine it accordingly, or proceed with it confidently. If you never build a bridge after watching this video, that's okay. But if at some point you find yourself at a river, and you think you might be able to cross it, you'll be ready to get your feet wet. You don't have to be a chicken about this, because you know what they say. Why did you bring up the joke about the chicken crossing the road? To get us to the other side. There's one last thing to a good bridge. Purpose. What is the purpose of this bridge? Why are we crossing this stream? If you've made it this far, like me, you probably assume that making puns is fundamentally good because laughter is good, and the more laughter we create around us, the better. But Cicero isn't satisfied with that. He identifies 5 reasons we engage in humor: to gain alliances, to conjure admiration, to throw off an opponent, to demonstrate sophistication, and to reduce tension and hurt. He also notes when not to use humor. Don't push down at the less fortunate, don't insult those that other people look up to, and know that in the world of puns, more isn't always better. Puns should be undertaken deliberately, and they won't always hit. But Cicero reminds us that sometimes you don't even want a pun to hit, or at least not to hit down. Cicero gives the example of Scipio Africanus, conqueror of Carthage, who was at a party, and the garland they put on his head kept falling off. A guest told him, "Don't be surprised if it doesn't fit, for your head is great." We don't need to use puns just to take people down. They can prop people up, and they can be more than that. In the recent Netflix show, The Three-Body Problem, there's a conversation which is relevant. I've removed any context, so don't worry if you haven't seen it. You can watch it later and reevaluate from a different perspective. Basically, one character tells a joke to another and they don't really get it. The character then says, "Humor is a very personal thing. Some people understand it and some people don't. Some jokes are so private that they only make sense to 2 people. But jokes are important. We wouldn't survive without them." The character says this as though the fate of the world rested with humor, and in some ways, maybe they're right. I opened this video by opining that my content is something of a joke. And it's true. Most of the things I make, with one conspicuous exception, aren't seen by that many people. But maybe that's okay. My jokes may not convey to everyone. Maybe it's a bridge no one wants to cross, or it's in such a secluded place that no one sees it. Maybe an algorithm hid the road to my bridge, so people will cross the bridge the algorithm extracts tolls from. But the people who used my bridge really seem to like it, and that's no joke. So thank you for indulging my humor. The jokes you and I share mean the world to me. It turns out I wasn't in fact able to make a video that didn't involve metaphors, but in teaching puns, I hope you also metaphors worthy of admiration. Architecture, span, traversal, originality, purpose. I hope that you may consider fooling around with them all. But even if you don't, that's all right. The important thing is that with our abridged guide to puns, having explained these steps, we've finally reached a stop.